Thanks, Peter. I think this is one of the most important meetings I've ever been involved in for two main reasons. I think what has been happening in Rwanda is, as an author said, it's a problem from hell. But we did not have the pleasure of really knowing who the real authors of this hellish experience have been. And I think what Peter has done has helped us and will help us enormously there is no absolute truth in this, to approximate at least what are very important aspects of this unfolding story. And what Dr. Theo has done in coming out openly and probably sharing with the world the role that the present president has done in shooting down that plane. There were suspicions, there were accusations and counter-accusations, but from a very authoritative position and perspective, what Theo has done is very astounding. And therefore, the experience of Rwanda has very important lessons for not only Rwanda itself, but for the whole region, for East and Central Africa, and probably for Africa generally. And it has very important lessons to be learned in terms of the position of the United Nations and the US government. We are not here to pontificate and apportioning blames. We are not here to categorize anybody as the criminals and those who perpetrated the crimes. I think the story is much more complicated. In the case of Somalia, in the case of the region, the involvement of Uganda definitely complicates the Somali case. I think we have succeeded in self-destruction as Somalis, but the role of Uganda, and particularly the role of the Ugandan forces and that of Burundi, are complicating the problem even further. It appears Somalia now is very much under the mercy of regional countries, our neighbors, whether it's Kenya, we knew of Ethiopia before. But the implications of probably this is a law school, this is not a business school. Probably what is unfolding in Somalia and the region is a more cost-effective way of bringing about, if not change, at least in creating an environment where the people of these countries are really hostages of powers that are not local. It's not an exaggeration that definitely Uganda has played a critical role in what the RPF has done, and the Rwandan invading forces were very much part of the Ugandan armed forces, very well trained, supported by Uganda. What Uganda is doing now in Somalia is not analogous. They are not really supporting a local group. They are imposing their will directly with the full support of the AU, the United Nations, and definitely the US administration is very supportive of that. So there are complications all around, and what is happening in Rwanda and the Great Lakes are not happening in isolation. They are affecting the whole region. They are affecting how the AU is going to deal with African problems and how the United Nations is going to be engaged in peace and security. I'd like to make two more other points. The first is that I'm very much encouraged by what Paul and Theo are trying to do. I think this idea of truth-telling and aiming for national reconciliation is a very salutary sort of endeavor, and they deserve to be helped. But what we have to know is not only the historical backdrop, it's not the context, but we know only too well that the problems are not going to be wished away, that the long road ahead is not going to be easy for the Rwandans or for the Somalis for that matter. What is crucial is the willingness to sit down together, to use peaceful dialogue, to use and to bend over backwards to try to engage in reasoned communication and ensuring that shared power and creating a common political space is what is needed. There are no victors on this. It may be generational. 1959 is not a long time ago. 1994 is not a long time ago. And the killing is still going on. And the creation of conditions that make peaceful resolution of these ongoing conflicts, we are nowhere near that unless there are people of vision, of courage, and faith. I salute somebody like Theo to say that it's not mea culpa as a Catholic, but it's human, and that needs really to be welcomed and encouraged. What I'd like to add to that is that Gramsci, the Italian communist, used to talk about the intellectuals of Italy and Europe should commit class suicide. And what he meant by that was that they have their respective class bases and orientations, and what they all needed was to aim for the higher ground, to engage in destroying the hegemonic culture that existing and was obtaining in Italy at the time and in Europe at the time. And I think probably that's the road forward. And I'm very much encouraged by what Paul and Theo and other Rwandans are trying to do. We definitely will watch that very carefully. We have a lot to learn from them, and we hope that although the issue of politicizing ethnicity, not only in Rwanda, but the newest country, South Sudan, it has a very, very troubled road ahead of them. That we already hear that the politicization of ethnicity in southern Sudan, the Nuers and the Dinkas, is very troubling, and I think that is, as Africans, what we share, and that is where we need to help each other, and hopefully, as a newly minted American, I would very much like to see these people that have given me a perfect refuge for me and my family, and who offered me at least the opportunity to be one of them. I do hope that this country, at this moment in history, will realize what is at hand and what is happening in Africa. I hear very troubling, shrill voices in this country. It's not the best of times for us, and I'm saying this as an American. I think it's time. Was it the prophet Micah who said, you have to walk humbly with thy God? I think the problems and the global issues that all face us are so enormous Nobody has a monopoly on wisdom. Nobody has a monopoly on saying that I have 800 number to upstairs. I think it's absolutely essential for us to come to grips with what is happening, what has happened in Rwanda, and more importantly, what is happening, and our prayers and our thoughts are with those who want to be part of the solution and not part of the problem itself. Thank you very much.